So the reality is that you don't have to inherit money. What you have to do is build wealth over time. And I think this is so important for people to know because a lot of people come from families. I mean, face it, I didn't inherit anything. I didn't come from a family that had a lot of money. I came from a family that had a lot of love. But if you think the only way you can become a millionaire is if you have to inherit it, and you don't come from a family that has any, then you think you're excluded. And that's just not true. So it's not a matter of what you inherit, it's a matter of what you're intentionally building.
Chris, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us about your new book, Everyday Millionaires. I'm so excited to talk to you about why you think it's possible for anyone to become a millionaire. But before we start, can you give our viewers a little bit of background about yourself and how you got to where you are today, teaching millions of people to become financially literate?
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. My career began many years ago. I grew up in rural Kentucky and ended up going to play college football in the state of Kentucky and moved on to Pennsylvania to go to graduate school. And after graduating, that's where I really started in my business career. I started in the banking industry and began to kind of learn a little bit more about how money works and how it can work you if you're not prepared for it. And so, in that path of moving and learning about money from the consumer finance industry into mainstream banking, into mortgages, and into wealth building, I started to get a bigger view of exactly how money worked. Had an incredible opportunity to cross paths with Dave Ramsey, and several months later became a part of his team. So I've been a part of Ramsey Solutions for 13 years now. And really, my mission is very simple. I want to educate and encourage and empower as many people as I can to truly understand how money works and what they can do to help themselves for their financial future.
Before you started working in the banking industry, were you knowledgeable about finance?
No, ma'am. No, I had no idea. What I knew about money was that I didn't have enough of it and I wanted more. Right? That's kind of where I fell. But it was amazing. And I'm so glad you asked that question because, starting off in the consumer finance industry, you see one side of this money equation. Moving into mainstream banking and wealth building, you see another side. But at the root of it, it was all boiled down to people not having the knowledge of what to do with money. Everybody's working hard and trying to make more of it, but I kept seeing the same trend. People were running out of money before the end of the month, or people didn't feel like they were making enough when they were making a good living. So I wanted to help shine the light on that so people could know the truth and to start making decisions to help themselves and their families.
So, is that why you decided to write a book about millionaires?
Well, to be honest, my first, working as a financial coach, I was working with a lot of pro athletes and entertainers back, in the early 2000s. And so, this began my path of wanting to help everybody begin to understand what you need to do to set yourself up for your financial future. I ended up writing my first book, Retire Inspired, and released that in 2016 to really, I called it America's wake up call about retirement. That retirement wasn't an age, it was a financial number. And we needed to quit worrying about what age we were. We needed to make sure we had a certain amount of money put up. But after doing that, and I knew, having been a part of Ramsey Solutions for, again, at that time, almost 11 years, I knew what was possible. That once you get yourself out of debt and you start investing, you can build wealth. But I did some media interviews and I was on a panel, and I'll never forget this. One of the panelists looked at me and said, "Well, Chris, the American dream is dead and gone. It's not available anymore." And then they cut to commercial break, and I was so frustrated, right? I didn't get a chance to respond to this because I knew the truth. So the reality is we started down this path of everyday millionaires, how ordinary people built extraordinary wealth by doing this one thing. We did the largest research study that's ever been done on millionaires. We talked to over 10,000 of them because I wanted to get to the truth. Was the American dream dead and gone, or was it alive and available? So that's what this research product sought to go out and prove, definitely the reality.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this study? You say 10, you studied 10,000 millionaires.
Mm. Yeah, we did. We actually, it got to so large, we actually ended up using a research firm to help us locate and connect with these millionaires because I didn't want to just talk to people that were in the Northeast or out in LA or California. I wanted a cross section of all across the country. And so utilizing this research firm, we were able to locate and identify over 10,000 of them. And so we were able to really connect with them, to drill down in to find out what they were doing and how they got there.
So there's a whole range here. You say all over the country, as you obviously talk about throughout your book, range of, we'll talk about this more in detail, but range of careers, salaries, lifestyles, everything.
It really is. And the research, this book is made up of a few different sections. Obviously, we have the largest research that's ever been done. That's a part of it. But we also have information where I'm sharing people about these millionaires and their habits and what they're doing. But the stories inside of this book are extremely motivating. I talked to some people that at some point were homeless in their lives, excuse me, and now they built up themselves to become an everyday millionaire. So the stories are amazing as well.
Is that why you called the book Everyday Millionaires?
Well, the reality is I wanted to know this. There's this myth out there that a millionaire is someone that's inherited all their money. They're a trust fund baby. And, this is just the picture society can paint. Well, I've met these millionaires all across the country as I travel and I speak. I know that's not the truth. It's not a matter of someone leaning up against a fancy car in front of a big house in a slick suit. These are everyday, hardworking men and women. So that's what I sought out to prove. And the reality is they are everyday people. You're living beside them. You may be working beside them. They don't flash it. They're not flashy people. These are people that are intentional on how they deal with money, and they have goals they're trying to reach.
So, like you said, your book is essentially broken up into essentially two parts: millionaire myths and millionaire habits. So, I want to ask you about the millionaire myths. But first, I want to ask you, what do you consider a millionaire? Is it net worth? What are you thinking?
Okay. Well, I'm so glad you asked this because there's a lot of confusion out there about net worth and what a millionaire is. A lot of people think to become a millionaire, you've got to make $1 million a year. That's not true. So I help people. I developed a free calculator to help people. It's called the Net Worth Calculator to help people get to the bottom of this. It's a free calculator. It's at my website, chrishogan360.com. But here's what it boils down to. You take what you own. That is your 401k, your 403b, your Roth IRAs, your home, the equity in your home, the money in your bank account. Take everything you own and then subtract out anything you owe on, anything that you have debt on. So with the total of what you own minus what you owe, if that end result is $1 million or more, then congratulations, you're an
You're a
everyday
millionaire.
That's right.
I love it. So, okay, so let's talk about some of the myths you talk about. The first one that I want to ask about is uh, inheritance. You say the general population thinks in order to become a millionaire, or the majority of millionaires inherited their wealth. What did you find?
Well, the truth is we found that 79% of the millionaires that we spoke to did not inherit one dime. Nothing.
79%.
Yeah, so these were all people that were first generation millionaires. They took their time, they built wealth over time, and so no one handed them anything. These are hardworking, everyday men and women that worked hard and stayed focused over time.
And you said, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you said that a big percentage of those who did inherit their wealth, it wasn't even that much money.
That's right. We found that around 16% of them had inherited something. But a majority of that 16% didn't inherit enough that caused them to become millionaires. So the reality is that you don't have to inherit money. What you have to do is build wealth over time. And I think this is so important for people to know because a lot of people come from families. I mean, face it, I didn't inherit anything. I didn't come from a family that had a lot of money. I came from a family that had a lot of love. But if you think the only way you can become a millionaire is if you have to inherit it and you don't come from a family that has any, then you think you're excluded. And that's just not true. So it's not a matter of what you inherit, it's a matter of what you're intentionally building.
Gotcha. Another myth you talk about is that all millionaires have high paying jobs. What
Yes.
percentage of millionaires in your study had C-suite or executive level jobs?
Well, it was a very small percentage. We had about 12 to 16, I think it was 16% of them were working in C-suite level careers. But a vast majority were working regular jobs. For example, the top three positions of all the millionaires that we talked
This
to,
was shocking to me when I read this.
number one was engineers, which really doesn't surprise you because they plan for stuff, right? Number two are accountants. Well, it doesn't surprise me either because right? They're good at numbers and math. Number three really shocked me. The number three position was teachers, school teachers, and college professors. And that shocked
Me
me.
too.
But then when you start to drill into it and understand, number one, teachers and educators, they're focused on learning. So they're always looking to grow their knowledge. They're not scared to ask a question if they have one. They're not scared to ask for help when they need it. But if you think about it, this individual that is a teacher or professor has stayed focused and invested in their 403B, which is like a 401k for teachers over time. And they were focused and they attacked and then they paid off their home. If you add up net worth, once again, the amount they have invested in their 403B plus the amount of their home that's paid off, they easily can become everyday millionaires in the path of 25 to 28 years.
On that note, do you mind if I read a short excerpt from your book? It it,
Not at all.
it really illustrates what you just said, and again, really kind of shocked me on this topic of your salary not really dictating your chances of obtaining millionaire status. So you wrote, let's say you get a $35,000 job out of college at age 22, and you stay in that same job, never even getting a raise until you're 65. If you're able to stay out of debt and live within your means, you should be able to invest the recommended 15% of your income, which comes out to about $437 a month. Putting $437 into a retirement account every month from age 22 to 65 will leave you with nearly $3.5 million at retirement. And that's if you never got a raise, never saved extra, never became a two-income household, never paid off your house, and never invested more.
Yeah.
Chris.
Yes. I'm going to tell you, people are shocked by this, but Michelle, listen to me. This comes down to what I call, and Albert Einstein called, the eighth wonder of the world. It's compound interest. You know, when your money is invested and it grows, now your money is growing and your interest is growing interest as well. So this is the value of time and compound interest as a way to be able to grow your money. What we have to do, though, is understand the importance of two things: setting that money in and aside in the 401k or 403b, but also not touching it, allowing time and compound interest to work on it so it can grow for you. So it's possible. One of the other shocking stats I want to share with you with this, because it's right around the income thing, is a third of the millionaires that we talked to never had a six-figure household income in a single working year. Now, I said two important things. They never had a six-figure household income. Household, that meant if there were two of them working, they didn't make six figures combined. But these individuals were still able to reach millionaire status, just like the example you just illustrated. So it's not a matter of feeling like you can't do it. It's a matter of understanding that you do have it available to you. You can do it. You just need to get started.
I love it, and I can't wait. We'll talk about that more in the habits of millionaires.
Yes.
So the third myth I wanted to ask you about was that millionaires take big risks.
Yeah.
What do you consider to be riskier than usual investments or actions that millionaires actually don't make their wealth off?
Well, here, a lot of people believe that in order to become a millionaire, I have to take some astronomical risk. I have to do something so outlandish that I put everything all in, right? And the reality is no, millionaires aren't doing day trading. You know, this was a thing that was big back in the early 2000s. The new craze nowadays are cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, right? You know, this thing that's unregulated and nobody can touch it or see it, but it supposedly has value. Millionaires aren't doing that either. What they're doing is they're investing over time. 79% of them said the number one tool that they used to help them build wealth was their employer sponsored retirement plan. I'm talking about 401ks and 403bs, as well as Roth IRAs and IRAs. So it wasn't some magical get rich quick scheme. What they were doing was focused on building wealth over time.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So the last myth I want to ask you about, and this is probably the one I hear the most, is that the average millionaire has access to opportunities that the average person doesn't. I think specifically education.
Mm.
What did you find with the participants in your study, and how many of them attended prestigious private colleges? Say, let's say.
Yeah, this was a big area because a lot of people, again, will say, well, in order to become a millionaire, I have to go to some prestigious high dollar school. And the reality is 62% of the millionaires that we talked to went to a public state university. 62%. 8% of them went to a community college. And 9% of the millionaires that we talked to didn't graduate college at all. So it's not a matter of you going to some prestigious school. I mean, we talk to millionaires that didn't go to school at all. But it is a matter of having this mindset of wanting to grow in your knowledge and to be able to understand some things better so you can utilize it in your own life. And so this is so important because we all know the student loan crisis that's going on out there right now. We've got $1 trillion issue with student loans. It has surpassed credit card debt and home mortgages as the top financial issue facing Americans today. So it's really important for us to really acknowledge this and understand. I'm a believer in higher education. I've got a few degrees myself. But what I don't want people to do is to believe that you have to sign on the dotted line to take on student loans in order to be successful. Now, I'm not poking at people out there if you have some student loan debt. There are a lot of people who have it out there. But I'm talking to people on my show, the Chris Hogan Show, millennials, Gen X and Gen Ys that have attacked their student loan debt and able to give themselves a raise. So even if you have student loan debt, it doesn't mean you still can't become a millionaire.
What do you recommend for students for getting through the college years without going into debt?
Well, Michelle, in order to go through college without student loan debt, it's going to require some planning and some strategic steps. What I mean by that is, there are scholarships and grants that are available out there to help people be able to go to school. Now, we do have to spend the time applying for those and doing the legwork that's required. But we can also, someone could go to school at night while they work during the day, or they can go to school during the day and work at night to be able to pay for school. But I also mentioned community college. This is an opportunity for us to be able to go to school and get an education much cheaper than going to a standard 4-year university. You could also go to a community college, take care of all the prerequisites, and then transfer to a 4-year institution and still graduate in 2 years. So it's going to take some planning and some thinking, but I'm seeing people do it all the time. And it's available and it's possible, but we do have to do our homework.
I remember my mom saying something once about I think because she and it's funny, she never got a college degree, but she did rise the ranks in her career, and she has hired several people in her career as well. And she always said, when you're hiring someone, when you're looking at someone's degree, you look at where they graduated from. You don't
Yeah.
look at where they attended throughout their college years. So she's like, so in terms of if someone's considering going to a community college first and then transfer to university or just university, she's like, it really doesn't matter so much if you're thinking about it in just terms of the degree. All they care about is where you graduated from,
No, that's so
if
true
even
because
that.
really, you're right. And your mom's right because what it shows is that you started something and you were able to finish, right? You had the initiative, or you were able to stay focused and move forward. And again, as a person that's done a lot of hiring over the years, I really didn't care where someone went to school. What I
Mm.
wanted to know is what are their areas of focus? Are they goal oriented? Are they hardworking? Is this somebody that can come in and be a part of the team to help us reach our mission? So it's so important, and I want people out there to see this and hear it. Because too often times, Michelle, I'm bumping into people that don't feel like they were born into the right family, or they didn't go to the right school, or they didn't live in the right neighborhood growing up, so they don't think that they can be successful. And I'm going to tell you something. I had an opportunity to meet one of the smartest people I've ever met, Condoleezza Rice, former Secretary of State. And she made a statement at one of our leadership events that I was speaking at with her. And she said, she said her parents told her at a young age, it doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is where you're going. And she said that was something that really stuck with her throughout her life. And I want to share that with people so we have that same mindset. Doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is where you're going.
Mm-hmm. Now you guys over at Ramsey Solutions, when you are hiring, you say you don't really pay attention to the college name, you just said. Do you ever hire people without college degrees?
Oh, absolutely, we have. I mean, we're here, at Ramsey Solutions, we have right around 850 team members now. And, our process of interviewing is talking to someone. And yes, there are multiple team members on our team that did not go to college. But they're plugged right in. They're some of our top workers. We have leaders that are in leadership positions that did not go to college, but they have the work ethic. They have the proof of what they can accomplish. So again, it's not a prerequisite. It's a matter of what this individual can do in their certain career field.
Gotcha. No, so what are your thoughts on university alternatives? Let's say, trade schools or online courses. I know for me, when I was making a little bit of a career change, several years ago, all the skills I learned for that change, I learned through $10 online classes.
Yeah. No, I think education can come from all different areas. From online courses, and again, community college. There are people that are doing community college online or able to take a course to help them to become more proficient in their desired career choice. But again, trade schools are something else that people don't talk about. I did a speaking engagement out for an association of welders many years ago, and these guys on average were making 125 to 175,000 a year. So the opportunities are there. Trade schools may be something that fits in for someone. They may want to be a plumber, an electrician, a welder. There are all kinds of opportunities out there. So I think it's important for parents to be able to guide their young men and young women to find out where are they interested, what gets them, excited, and where do they want to be a productive, member of society.
Hmm. And I think it's important for people to know that there are different ways of learning, different methods of learning as well. Like for me, and actually this brings me to the statistic in your book that I thought was interesting, that you said that the average millionaire had a B average or less in school. And I loved that because I was kind of the same, and I loved learning. I paid attention. I was a really good kid, right? But there was something about, I don't know, something about the structure of school that didn't resonate with me as much as, say, in world application.
Right.
Um,
Well, I think that's important. I think it was important that you were able to identify that and to be able to know yourself, right? To put ourselves in a position where we can excel in whatever it is we're doing. And so hands-on learning can be a lot more, beneficial to someone as opposed to just book knowledge. And so, yeah, the thing about the GPA, I fell in that B plus average area myself. But it doesn't, again, this education piece doesn't dictate that you're going to be successful. I know people that had 4.0, GPAs, but they're working in an area they're not passionate about or they don't love. So it's really important. One of the big stats that came out of all this research for me was that 97% of the millionaires that I talked to feel like that they're in control of their own destiny.
mm,
97%. Now, what that means is doesn't mean that life doesn't happen and they're out of control. Life's going to happen to them just like anyone else. But it's this mindset that I get to decide how I'm going to respond and what I'm going to do with my life. And it's really a difference between having a victim mentality versus having a victor mentality. And I talk about that in the book. And I think it's really important for us to make sure that we maintain this positive outlook, that we can deal with whatever comes our way with the right information and the right people around us.
And you also mentioned that millionaires were more likely to have participated in extracurricular activities in school. Why do you think that is?
Well, I feel like, for a couple of reasons. When you're involved in extracurricular activities, a team sport or a team function, it helps you to learn how to become a part of a team. Where you're not just thinking of yourself, you're also thinking of others. You learn how to do your role and appreciate other people that are a part of the team. And I think it's a natural thing as we socialize and we get to know other people and to get connected. I think that's a growth thing as well. It helps us to understand that we play a role. And that's really important in families and in our workplace environment, that we all are a part of a team that's bigger than ourselves. So I think those skills are very, very vital to people who learned how to be successful at an early age.
Gotcha. So those are just a few of the myths that I wanted to talk to you about. You talk about other of them in the book,
Yes.
but now I want to talk to you about the millionaire habits. So
Mhm.
those were the things that millionaires did not do that or partake in that people think they do. But then you have an entire part about what in fact they do that made them
Yes.
achieve millionaire status. And I thought it was so interesting. You just mentioned that the number that 97% of millionaires say that they felt in control of their own destiny. The
Mhm.
first chapter of this part of your book is literally called Millionaires Take Personal Responsibility.
Yes.
And I think the first line of that chapter was something along the lines of, we have a responsibility crisis in our country today. Are you able to talk about that a little more?
Well, I think it just, it goes to show that, that mindset of being in control, that mindset of, listen, if I did achieve something or I didn't achieve it, either way, I'm going to look into myself. I'm going to look in the mirror first. I'm not going to grab an excuse. And I think that's
Mm.
what happens when you try to blame others or you try to push it on to someone else about what you've achieved. I think that mindset is really important. It goes back to the victim thinking versus the victor thinking. And I think it's one of the things that responsible, people do, that I'm not looking to blame anybody. I'm going to be in charge of my attitude, my outlook, and my responses. And I think that's how you have this pull up your bootstraps mentality to understand that where I am may not be where I want to be, but I'm not going to stop. And I'm willing to make those sacrifices that are necessary to get to where I want to go.
I think it Will Smith who says something like, you have, I can't remember the exact wording and it's really good, so I wish I had it, but something like, you have absolutely no control over your past. There's nothing you can do about it, but you absolutely have a responsibility for what happens to you in the future.
Mm.
And I love
Uh,
that because it's so true. We all have stuff that have happened to us in the past that we could so easily and understandably
yes.
make excuses about.
Yes. Yeah. And I appreciate you mentioning that because in making that statement about personal responsibility, it doesn't mean that people haven't had some tough things happen, that people aren't dealing with some serious life challenges or serious relationship challenges or family situations. No, I'm not minimizing that at all. What I'm saying, though, is because of those things, I've talked to and met a lot of people that decided, despite those things happening in their past, that they weren't going to allow that to dictate what happened to them moving forward. And I think that's the lesson to take out of this. And again, the stories that are in the book, Everyday Millionaires, will show people time and time again of people who overcame some insurmountable odds, some very tough scenarios, but they remained focused and dedicated to striving to work hard.
You're right. I mean, almost every story in your book seemed like it was a person or a couple that started off either in their upbringing or even
Mm,
themselves in a less than desirable situation.
yeah, yeah.
I can't remember what's the number of is it one third of the millionaires that you studied grew up in a middle class or lower
That is
household?
Yes, that is absolutely right. So again, you don't. We're not talking when I talk about millionaires. I'm not talking about people of privilege. I'm not talking about trust fund babies. The people in this book were hardworking men and women that were working regular, everyday jobs that were consistent and focused over time. And so it wasn't about being handed anything. These were people that worked hard, strived, and made sacrifices for many years as they remained in pursuit of this goal.
Mm. And you also talk about the importance of having good influencers in your financial journey. Why is that so important?
Well, I think it's important because let's face it, life is not meant to be done alone.
Mm.
We are meant to have community, whether it's our neighborhoods or in our workplace. And so I think it's important for us to have this mindset that I'm going to reach out and talk to people that have knowledge that I need. For example, 68% of the millionaires that I talked with in the study, all of them used an investment professional to help guide them. That meant even though they knew the importance of investing, they still reached out to someone that had knowledge that they didn't have or deeper knowledge than they had to be able to get some guidance. And I think it's so important for your viewers out there that if you have a question that you reach out to someone that can help you. But Michelle, here's the big thing for me. I talk about that it's important to talk to someone that has the heart of a teacher. That means you want to talk and work with someone that's there to help you, a real estate agent, an investment professional, a tax professional that's desiring to help you, not sell you something.
Mm.
So it's really important to talk to someone that has the right heart and right spirit to help you get to your goals.
Yeah, didn't you say something like if they start selling you on something, run?
Run. That's exactly right. Get your purse, get your car keys, and run. Get out of there because they're not putting you first, they're putting themselves first. And again, I've met a lot more good people out there that are willing to help people and to guide them. And if your viewers out there are looking to talk to someone with the heart of a teacher, all they have to do is go to chrishogan360.com, click on the Dream Team button, and you can find investment professionals or real estate professionals that you can talk to see if they can help you.
I love that. I was going to ask you for those who don't have anyone in their life that is knowledgeable about finance,
Yeah.
where can they go to find someone to guide them? So that's perfect.
Yeah, I just want people to ask the questions that they need to know. Some of the things when I used to coach people years ago, I would sit down and I would talk with them, and they would say, you know what, I've always wanted to ask someone this, but I just didn't know how. And so to hear that and to hear their question and to be able to answer it, I know that I'm putting them on a path to be able to help themselves, but not just themselves, but they're going to be able to help friends and family that may have that very same question sometime in the near future.
Right. Because it's a decently not decently, it is a complicated
It
world.
is. Yeah.
Finance, investing, where to invest, who to trust, who to not,
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I will say about your book that I think is really nice is that you break these processes down very simply. You make becoming a millionaire seem so simple.
Well, I appreciate it. My goal in any book that I write, I approach it like I'm having a conversation, much like we're talking now. And I want people to get it. That's why I'm always giving illustrations or, talking about my mistake that I made many, many years ago, because I want people to be able to relate to the information. Because if they can relate to the information, they can begin to then grow their knowledge and then apply the actions that they need to start to get to where they want to go. I'm one of those country boys. I grew up in Kentucky. I did not have millionaires around me. I never saw this. I didn't know it was possible. And so I want people just to know the American dream is not dead and gone. It's alive and well. We live in the greatest country on the planet where we can make a decision and we don't need anyone's permission slip. We can decide to work harder, decide to grow our knowledge and change our habits. We can do this. And so I want to encourage more people to decide for themselves and start taking the right action steps.
Yeah, I think that this book is such a good complement to some other books that are more I guess how it go into the weeds, I guess a little bit. I think of another big finance book I read was Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. I don't know if you
Hmm.
read it. It's like 700 pages,
Yes.
and it's just numbers after numbers after numbers and term after term after term, which is great. To learn that stuff is really invaluable and wonderful. But I think for beginners, it can be a little intimidating.
Well, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of information. As you said, this world of finance and financial matters is complicated. So it's really important to grow our knowledge. I think there are three areas that I think if people begin to dive into, we can have a better financial future for ourselves. The first one is beliefs. Like
Mm.
you really have to ask yourself, what do you believe is possible? What do you think you can achieve? You see, our belief system is impacted by our family and what we grew up, what we were told we might be able to achieve, what we saw family members achieve. All of these things impact our beliefs. And so it's really important for us to revisit that and to decide as an adult what we're going to choose to believe is possible for you moving forward. So after beliefs, the next one is knowledge. We need to learn things. There's so much free information out there via podcasts, online. We can read and learn. So growing knowledge is important. But the third area is our actions.
Mm.
I think it's so important for us to take the right steps and the right actions to be successful with money. For example, I think it's imperative for us to learn to budget so we can tell money where to go
That's what
instead
I
of
want
what.
to ask you about next. So it's
Yes.
perfect.
Budgeting is so very vital because it gives us more control over money, but also attacking and getting out of debt. You give yourself a raise when you get out of debt, then having an emergency fund. So when life happens, you've got cash, but also starting to invest. Putting money away allows time and compound interest to grow your money.
So let's talk about actually those three things, like you just said: budgeting, getting out of debt, and investing. The budgeting, particularly there's one word in the book that you used over and over that has really stayed with me even after I finished the book, and
Okay.
that's intentionality.
Yes.
I think the
Yes.
idea of every choice you make should be a conscious decision
Right.
is
No.
so true, especially with finances, because if if we aren't intentional with where our money goes, I think those who are intentional with wanting to take our money, I think, marketers, credit card
Mm.
companies, they will win. They will take our money if we're not paying attention to it.
I could not agree with you more. And helping people to see that. I was talking, I've got three sons. They're 12, 13, and 14.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was, yeah, I know. Oh, wow, it's right. They're busy. But I was talking to them about commercials, and I was like, listen, commercials, the goal of that is to get you to go spend money. And I said, so you got to look at it a little bit different. And I remember when the light bulb went off for me many years ago and seeing this and realizing we're the most marketed to country on the planet. We've got ads and things coming at us on our phone, on the radio, on TV. And if we're not intentional about our plan for our money, someone else is. And so I want people to make clear decisions for themselves about what matters to them and where they're going to spend their money. We have to remain in control. If we don't, someone else will be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I love it. It's even a great concept for outside of money too. I mean, eating, working
Yeah.
out, whatever, just every decision you make should have some kind of conscious decision behind it. I really
I
love that.
No, I think it's a very good point. And again, people that are successful in any chosen area, they have sacrificed some things to be able to get there. They've been very intentional with their actions, very intentional with their relationships, who they've connected with, who they've mentored, who they've learned from. So people that are successful, it's not an accident at all. It was their plan all along. That's what they worked toward as they were setting goals for themselves.
So I want to ask you real quick about the whole term keeping up with the Joneses. I love what you and Dave Ramsey say. People spend money they don't have on things they don't need to impress people they don't like. It's so true.
It is true. It really is. And this is more prevalent, I think, in the United States in two areas, in the cars that people drive and the homes that people live in.
Mm,
And if you think about that, new car payments are right around $600 a month now, right? New car loans are extended out to 6 to 7 years long now. And thinking about this, you're driving in a depreciating asset. That means it goes down in value each year, right? And people will try to make arguments with me about classic cars. Yeah, these cars are 25 years and older. I'm talking about new cars. And so it's really important for us to make these decisions not about trying to impress people, but us being providing for our family and ourselves. So we've got to think differently about this and shake off the stigma and the thoughts of everyone else's opinion and really start to decide for you and your household what matters to you and what are you working toward.
hmm Well, I think that's a perfect transition into the other millionaire habit, and this might be one of the biggest ones that I know that you guys really emphasize, which is staying out of debt.
Yes.
And I know that you are understandably against no credit cards, no loans, no personal debts. And I think that, the average person would agree with that living every day to day, borrowing
Mhm.
off borrowed money is not good. But on this topic of, say, cars and homes, what do you recommend for those who can't buy a house cash or want to buy a new car like we were just talking about, but
Right.
can't buy, maybe buy that cash?
Well, let me clarify this. I think, first and foremost, debt is a thief. I mean, it steals from us. Anytime you use someone else's money, they charge you this thing called interest. And so, I want people to get a PhD in economics, and I'm going to give it to you right here. Interest that you pay is a penalty. Interest that you earn is a reward. So if I use someone else's money, they penalize me by charging me interest. But if I gain interest in my investments and my Roth IRAs and I gain it, then I'm being rewarded. So I want people to see that. I want you to have more rewards in your life than penalties. Now, I want to clarify something. The only debt I'm okay with someone having is a 15-year fixed rate mortgage on a home. I understand paying cash for a home is a large feat. I've had many people over the years do it, and it's amazing.
Wow.
But having a 15-year fixed rate mortgage on a home, that's okay. The average millionaire that I talked to, they were paying their homes off in around 11.5 years. So in 11 and a half years, they were paying off their home. So their mortgage payment wasn't leaving them anymore. They got a chance to utilize it. But you bring up cars, right? I don't, again, the goal of a vehicle is to get me from point A to point B. I'm not trying to buy a status symbol. I'm not trying to buy something to impress someone. So I encourage people just to save up, get a regular car, find a $2,000-3,000 car that you pay cash for, drive that while you're saving up to buy a better car later. We just need to slow down and think more long term as opposed to short term.
Mm. Now, with the houses, you say 15-year fixed mortgage, not
Yes.
30.
No, because I'm a former banker, so I was on the
Mm.
other side of the table. And I understand, not only are we talking about a 15-year difference in the amount of years you have to make this mortgage payment, but on average, the typical difference between a 15-year mortgage and a 30-year mortgage is between $500 to $700 a month. But again, we're talking about 15 years less to pay off the home. So if we buy the right amount of home on the front end, and that requires us to think
Mm.
forward and really be conscientious and not try to buy the 12-bedroom home when you're a family of two, right? We got to be smart and we have to be careful and be more intentional with our home buying.
And what about those that say they want the home mortgage for the tax advantages?
Oh, Michelle,
Oh, no.
you're going to get me riled up here.
Oh, no.
Couple things that with this, typically to be able to deduct the interest off of the mortgage, you have to fully itemize your taxes. Less than half the people in the United States fully itemize their taxes. So really, what this boils down to is,
Okay.
having that mortgage around becomes more of an excuse than it does become any kind of financial game plan. It's real easy. You can walk to any bank or mortgage company and look around. They're doing quite well for themselves, and there's a reason for that, right? They're making money. So I want us to be able to, and again, I'm nothing against banks. They serve a purpose with their checking accounts and savings accounts and money market accounts. But we just have to begin to see this clearly for what it is. Being able to decide for ourselves what's a better scenario, me making a $2,000 a month payment on my mortgage or me getting focused and paying it off and having $2,000 stay with me each month. I think the 2000 staying with you allows you to help a single mom or a single dad or to be able to help a charity that you believe in as opposed to sending it to a bank or a mortgage company.
Hmm. So, what do you think about taking out loans for investment purposes, let's say for a business venture?
Mhm. Well, this is something I hear a lot, and as I travel the country speaking on leadership as well, a lot of people will tell me, Chris, well, I needed a loan to start my business. And inevitably, when someone tells me this, I'm able to walk through and really show them, no, 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 you chose to take out a loan to start your business. You can start a business in your garage without going into debt. It's a matter of having a business plan and having a product that customers need or want and a way that you can help people. So again, you can start a business. You don't need a loan to start a
Mhm.
business. A lot of people will rationalize that because they're wanting to start bigger than they need to or bigger than they should have. And again, that's a person's personal preference. But I'm just here to be the voice of reason to tell you if you want to start a business, you don't have to take out a loan. What you need is a game plan and a business plan on how you're going to serve people.
Do you recommend having any lines of credit open for, say, emergencies or to build credit?
Well, a couple things here. I do want people to have money tucked away for an emergency. That's why I say it's the emergency fund.
Mm.
That's where I want you to save up 3 to 6 months of expenses. Keep it liquid. Keep it in a money market account at your bank. A money market account is going to give you a better rate of return than a standard savings account. But as far as lines of credit open on your home or personal lines of credit, no. Again, it boils down to if you have access to debt, people 9 times out of 10 are going to end up using it. And we got a PhD in economics earlier. If I use someone else's money, they're charging me a penalty called interest. I don't want to be penalized in my life. I want to be rewarded. So stay away from debt, build up your emergency fund, and pay cash for items.
So once people get their budgets in place and they pay off their debts, what did the average millionaire in your study do with the rest of the money that they saved?
Well, they immediately began, they knew the value of having an emergency fund. So they had a set a dollar amount set aside to be able to help them if life were to
Mhm.
happen.
And you say 3 to 6 months?
Correct. Three to
Mhm.
6 months. And I say that because if you have two people that are working or you have a job that's super stable, you've been there for 10 years or more, then a 3 month emergency fund would be fine. But if you're self
Mm.
employed or you're someone that has seasonal work, you may want to look at having a bigger emergency fund of at least 6 months. Tucked away. But once they had the emergency fund, then that's where they begin to invest investing using their employer sponsored retirement plan, the 401ks or 403bs, Roth IRAs, and IRAs, because they knew wealth building takes time and consistency. So that's what the millionaires were doing.
So the unsexy investments, the boring investments is what
Hey,
you say.
sometimes boring is good,
Right.
Michelle. I need to be consistent over time and know, hey, listen, when you invest in the stock market using growth stock mutual funds, as I guide people to look into, it's a lot like riding a roller coaster. There are going to be some ups and there's some downs. But I know when I ride a roller coaster, if I wear my seatbelt, that I'm going to deal with the ups and downs just fine, and I'm going to get to where I want to go. So it's a lot like that as you invest. However, when you take on riskier investments, single stocks, cryptocurrencies, this is where you're taking too much risk on something that is wildly unstable. And so that's why I guide people look at growth stock mutual funds, sit down with your investment professional, walk through those, even talk about what you're investing in inside of your 401k or 403b.
And you say leave it in. Do not take it out.
No, do not take it out because, typically when people pull money out, this is where you start to cause a lot of issues. Number one, the 401k, this is money you put in pre tax. So you didn't pay any taxes on this money. When we withdraw money out of the 401k at age 59 and a half, that's the age you can do it without having a penalty. You'll pay taxes on that money as you pull it out. Well, if you pull the money out prior to age 59 and a half, you're going to pay taxes as well as the penalties for early withdrawal. So you could lose up to 40 to 50% of the money that you had in by taking it out early.
Oh my
So
goodness.
once you invest it, leave it there. If you need money, you've got an emergency fund for that. Let's let this money sit still inside of your 401k and 403b so it can keep growing.
So you say that the millionaires you talk to, they say the 401k was the biggest contributor to their wealth. What about the self-employed? What do you recommend for them?
The self-employed people, they understood the value of being able to invest themselves, whether they were utilizing a solo 401k or a SEP, a self-employed pension plan for themselves. They still were investing. They knew the importance of putting money aside so it can grow. Here's the deal. There's one word I want your viewers to understand, and it's called inflation. And all we have to do is think back 5 or 10 years ago and think of gas prices, right? Gas prices back 5, 10 years ago were a whole lot cheaper than now. That's because of inflation. The cost of gas has rose over time. Well, guess what? If it's gone up in 5 or 10 years, we all know what the cost of gas is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to keep going up. So that means the money that I'm putting away, I need that money to grow. I can't have this money just sit still in a savings account. It's not going to grow enough to outpace inflation. So it's important for us to not just save money, we need to invest money utilizing the stock
Gotcha.
market. Yes.
And what's the difference between a Roth 401k and a non-Roth?
Okay, great question. Whenever you hear the word Roth, I want you to think of this: tax free.
Ooh.
Roth means tax free. Okay, so that means the government's not going to touch it anymore. You've already paid taxes on this money, so you're putting it away. You're investing in a Roth IRA. So that means that money and all of its growth is going to grow tax free. That's a beautiful thing. The 401k is a great tool to help you put away money, but remember, that's a pre-tax retirement account. So I'm going to pay taxes on the money I put in my regular 401k later when I pull the money out at 59 and a half. But for some people that are lucky, they may be working for an employer that offers a Roth 401k. That means you can put money in after tax in your 401k that's going to grow tax free, because Roth equals tax free. So if you have that available, I want you to talk to your investment professional, sit down, look at all the information, and utilize the Roth every chance you get.
Gotcha. Okay, so Roth is essentially paying taxes up front so you don't have to pay them later.
That is correct. That's a great illustration. Roth equals tax free.
Gotcha. So we had on US veteran and motivational speaker Mayar Rostami, and he's also a big advocate for goal setting, like you really emphasize. And he also really emphasizes the power of writing them down. Like you say, why do you think that's so important?
Well, I think there's something. Herm Edwards, a former NFL coach, has this statement. He said, "A dream without a plan is called a wish." And I love that when I heard that several years ago. I think when we have goals, what we're doing is we decide what's important to us. We're deciding to choose to aim our effort. By writing it down, what it does is it begins to have another layer of accountability. It's where we go from being just interested in something versus making it happen. For example, every year in December, people make a couple of decisions for themselves. Losing weight or getting healthy is always one of the top things people choose, right? And they start off strong in January. But typically, according to recent surveys and studies, people tend to fall off the goal within 30 days.
Yeah.
And so I've been there, I've done that.
Yeah.
This year I've been more focused than ever, and I'm on track and staying on track. But when we write something down, it gives us a level of accountability, but also for us to be serious about it. And there's nothing better than to look down at a piece of paper and see your own handwriting. You knew that this is something that you wrote. You can't deny it. So now what you have to do is put in the work to achieve it or not. Either way, it's up to you.
hmm And on the goal setting, you also say you should have short-term and long-term goals, but that you shouldn't start acting on your long-term goals until all your debts are paid off. So this means you don't recommend saving or investing until you are debt-free. Is that right?
That's correct. I want people to attack all debt except for the house before they start trying to save or invest. And the reason for that is it allows us to have tunnel vision, for us to be focused on what it is we're trying to make happen. And it helps us, again, and I've seen people, regardless of debt level, people are paying off their debt in 18 to 24 months. I'm seeing this, and this is they're taking on extra jobs. They're being intentional. I've seen people downgrade lifestyle, sell the extra car, to be able to get themselves out of debt because they know the importance of being able to get your money back. And I told someone, they were like, well, I really want to make extra money. I said, listen, the best way to give yourself a raise is to attack debt. Once you get yourself out of debt, your money can stay with you. It doesn't have to go anywhere. It was a paradigm shift for them to be able to look at it that way.
So to finish up, were there any stories in your book that were particularly compelling for you?
Oh, there were lots of stories. As I said, I talk about a bunch of them inside the book, but Thomas's story really is one that jumps out at me. This was a young man growing up. He had a tough home situation. His dad was an alcoholic. His mother had some mental health issues. So because of that, he was in and out of 4 or 5 foster homes growing up. It was rough for him. But despite growing up in that kind of tough environment, he went on to serve in the military, was able to come back and go to college and get his degree. But he also made a decision that he wanted to work in the field of education. He wanted to help shape other young men and young women as they were beginning to grow in their careers and making decisions for themselves. Well, despite his upbringing and that tough challenge, Thomas was able to retire from a career as a teacher with a net worth of $2.5 million. So again, this story just illustrates perseverance, focus, and it doesn't matter how you start, it's a matter of where you're going. And I love his story because it shows we get to make decisions for ourselves, regardless of where we come from. We get to decide.
We get to decide. And that's your book. I mean, that's what your book is about. That's why it's
Yes.
called Everyday Millionaires. You think anyone can become a millionaire. I mean, and after reading your steps, I mean, I kind of, even thinking about my own life or anyone else I know, I'm like, there's really not any excuse, really, if you go through the book.
Right. I mean, I just want people to know that it's possible,
Hmm.
that it's available to them. Now, they have to decide, ultimately what they want for themselves or for their legacy or their kids' one day. But, as a father of 3 boys, I know that one day I want my great grandkids to reap the benefits of something that I've started now. And that's how legacies are built. That's how you
Mm.
can make an impact. And I want to be able to impact my community and this country by being able to do giving that's anonymous, right? To be able to support charities that I believe in, to be able to do things that I feel strongly about. And I think if we get more people having the freedom to do the things they want to do and to be able to support the things and causes they believe in, we've got a happier nation. We've got a more financially stable and happy nation in the long run.
Mm. Well, I think that that's a perfect place to wrap up. Thank you so much for coming on, breaking these concepts down for us. I mean, they're obviously, even more in the book, but being able to talk with you about it has been really wonderful. So we'll have to, have you come back on, maybe talk about retirement more from your last book or any of the other topics regarding
Well,
finance.
thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to joining you again.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching the episode. If you're interested in contributing to the conversation and supporting the show, there's 2 easy things you can do. 1, click subscribe, and 2, visit our Patreon page where you get exclusive access to the Exploring Minds community.